Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, your home for heavy strategy, awesome theme, and everything in between. Check us out along with other great podcasts at dicetowernetwork.com.
Every Night is Game Night, episode 95, Novel Games, featuring the Expanse and Mistborn House War. Hey everybody, welcome back to Every Night is Game Night. This is episode 95, and once again with you is Anthony and Jason.
Yo, my peoples, what's up?
Hey guys, we have some novel games for you this time. We are readers, at least Jason and I are readers. Voracious readers.
A lot of us are readers out there, man. That's why we're doing this. A lot of us love this stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like there's a huge, like, the Venn diagram of board gamers and lovers of science fiction and fantasy novels. It's almost a single circle. So these are the two we're going to talk about today are two particular book series that I greatly enjoy. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, so we're going to set up a little bit of a different kind of episode for you. First of all, these are two games, as Anthony mentioned on the jump, The Expanse and Mistborn House War. These are very competitive games in their own ways, which we'll describe in a second. Not our usual fare, but again, the IPs, we're definitely excited to get you guys a dedicated episode to them. The other thing that we're going to do that's a little bit different is we're going to geek out a little bit about the settings because, like Anthony said, both novel series, we both read them, we both enjoy them, and we hope that you guys are out there too. So if you guys want to share your love of like these games or any other games, we have a brand new Facebook group. There's discussion going on in that Facebook group. People commenting on the geek list. So please engage with us and join us as we go on this journey towards different kinds of episodes, different kinds of content, all for you. All right, so you ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right, but before we get there, look, I just started Anthony up and
now come on, man.
We have to get to Liz. So she has Okay, so here is Liz to tell you about another Kickstarter project in Liz We Trust segment. Here we go.
Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I'm here to feed your Every Night is Game Night acquisition disorder. This week I want to talk about the Snowdonia Deluxe reprint, which is being handled by ENGN Games. Snowdonia, designed by Tony Boydell, is a worker placement game about building railways in Wales and, thanks to added expansions, in other parts of the world. Your team of workers will need to gather resources, clear away rubble, build new track, and help to create railway stations. If you like worker placement games and trains, Snowdonia is a no-brainer and it's an insta-back for me. This is a much-loved solo game that has become hard to get a hold of over the years, but the deluxe edition contains the main game, every expansion ever released, and an all-new scenario. I highly recommend this one. Happy gaming.
All right. Thank you, Liz. So let us get to some novel games. I started Anthony before on a false start. Sorry about that, man.
Oof, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So let's talk about a personal favorite of both of ours. Even though I am not a science fiction fan, but I really do love this series. It is The Expanse.
It is The Expanse, and it's perfect because I literally just watched the season finale for season 3 last night. So this is a series of books that is written by a pair of people, and if I had their names in front of me right now, I would tell you what they are. But it's
Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham.
Perfect, thank you. And these individuals actually have a relationship that goes back with George R.R. Martin, who has written, of course, A Song of Ice and Fire, a series of books that we both also love. And that's how I originally got into The Expanse, is the recommendation on the cover from Martin to read these books. And so I did. They have since been turned into a television series that was on Sci-Fi, and next year it'll be on Amazon. Thank you, Amazon. It was canceled for about 24 hours, but they fixed that. And the show, the books, everything about it, it's space opera in the purest sense, but it's nearish future space opera. It's in our solar system. And when it picks up, it's a lot of things that are very recognizable to us. We have Earth, we have Mars, we have people out on the belt, on Ceres, and the other asteroids in the belt, and Jupiter, and their moons. And then something happens that kind of changes the status quo of all that. And that's where the board game comes in. The board game it takes the core mechanisms of this universe, the idea that you have the two major powers and a third rising power in the belt, and then throwing in this fourth wildcard power in the form of, in the board game at least, Protogen, which is a company that produces, it does a lot of things, but it's really the company, the power behind the proto-molecule, which impacts everything. That's what the whole show is about. And the actual board game itself is an area control game, which fits perfectly, I think, with the theme and the story and everything that's going on in this series. So you have all these different planets and locations and moons and asteroids, and they're kind of built out in different rings on the map. And you're trying to vie for control in them in various different ways. And you do this by playing cards that you're going to purchase from a row that's in front of everybody. There's going to be 5 cards in the display at any given time. And you will spend points to get these cards. You're spending actual victory points if you choose to spend points and not just take the free card. And when you do that, you have a couple of options. You can use the action points on the card and give everybody else the opportunity to activate the event on that card, or you can take the event of the card. And then all these different cards are special abilities. Your own faction has special abilities. All of them are built to do one thing, is to get your cubes onto these different planets. And so when a scoring card finally comes up and someone activates it, you're in a position to score the most points possible. So a lot of comparisons have been made to Twilight Struggle, which is a very heavily card-based 2-player area control game based on the Cold War. This is actually a 4-player game. So Jeff Engelstein, the designer, has managed to take the idea of the card-based area control from Twilight Struggle and make it into a 4-player game, and it works really well. And it scales decently well from 2 to 4. The other amazing thing about this game, because if you've played Twilight Struggle, you know it's a 3 to 4 hour game, is that this takes an hour and a half, maybe hour at the most. It's in that 1 to 2 hour range, and I don't think we've ever hit 2 hours. It is a relatively short, relatively quick, accessible game that people who just like the show, like the books, can jump into and play, which is relatively rare. I feel like you either have really dumbed down versions of games, that are IP based, or you have really overwrought.
Thanos Rising.
Or you get crazy overwrought things, like we talked about Game of Thrones. The Game of Thrones board game takes 4 hours, and it's brutal. Yeah. Like that's not a game for people who are just like, oh, I like this show, let me play a board game. No, it's too long. This is a perfect kind of mix in between. Now, the one thing I have an issue with in this game is that they didn't really do a whole lot in terms of production design. It's a $50 game, but you have photographs from the show on the cards. You have cubes instead of, ships. And really, there's not a lot going on here. The board's kind of nice, but everything is small. Everything is scaled down. It's very compacted. And it's from WizKids, a company known for miniatures. And this feels like a kind of a game that could have had miniatures. Does it need them?
Did
No,
they skimp out on that? Oh, come on now.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's when I first opened it up and played it, I was like, I had to play it a second time to be like, do I actually like this? Or is it just like I'm a little disappointed by the lack of production quality? If that doesn't, if that's not a, deal breaker for you, it's actually a very solid game. You don't hear a lot about it because it's WizKids and they don't promote anything. They do no marketing for any of their games. But I mean, I reviewed this back on BGA back in the day. I really liked it. I think I gave it a strong play. The price kind of held me back from giving it a buy because of the production quality, but it's a good game, and I think it does a good job of representing this universe, and it was a good selection of mechanics based on what this book series and what this show is about.
So, okay, we both love The Expanse, like the books, the show. It's if you don't know the show, I mean, we gave kind of a general overview of, but it's really like an adventure show. Like it centers on this cast of characters. The pilot and the pilot's, second in command, and who's like this spunky, lady from the OPA, Outer Planets Alliance, and it has all these different characters, like 4 characters in the same ship. And it follows that. So like, and the politics that you're describing, the belt and Mars and whatever, kind of happens in the background. So they really foreground the background stuff here. And you don't eat is the Rocinante even in this game or anything like that?
Yeah, so that's a good point, because the shows in the book are about the Rocinante and its crew, and then everything that happens they kind of get involved with. The game is about all the big picture stuff, but the Rocinante's in it just it's not a player controlled character. It's a it rotates control, I think, based on who's in last place. I think where you move the Rocinante to, and the Rocinante can affect control of various systems. But it is an NPC to a certain degree. It moves based on certain card effects. Different players can move it and define where it goes. You want to play as the Rocinante, you want to be those characters, but it makes sense if you're going to have a 4-player board game. You can't all be the, like, what are you going to do, right? There aren't 4 Rocinantes. You've got one group of cool people and then a bunch of kind of nameless people around them, with a lot of interesting characters in those groups, but, it's the 4 factions. So it's there, but it's kind of on the outside.
Yeah. And the other thing, like, so you talked about how the legacy is from like the George R. Martin kind of tree. You can kind of imagine these authors are like, from a learning tree or whatever. So like they have the crew of like wandering, adventurers, but then you have like, you mentioned the proto-molecule. That's kind of like the White Walkers of this universe. So like this thing that can exist completely outside and it's affecting what's going on, but it's not really, like people are reacting to it and they're wondering, like, I mean, in the Game of Thrones show, not to spoil, but like they're not trying to get the White Walkers in their advantage. Here they are, but there's still this outside alien threat, and it's it represents the end of life as you know it, and people have to react to it. So it just sounds like there's none of that here. I mean, does that like it just seems like this is an area control game, and it doesn't need to be the Expanse. Is that am I getting the right feeling about that?
I don't know. I mean, I think the theme really it does fit, but the problem is they based the IP here on the TV show. And it was released a year ago. So it was based on 2 seasons of a TV show that really hadn't gone... Like, they just... Like, if you've watched the show, you get to the end of season 2, you're just kind of just starting to get the idea of what the proto-molecule even is. Right. So I don't know if it's a thematic issue or just that's where they were in the show and that's the amount of information that the designer of the game was able to kind of put in there. I think he does a good job with what he's allowed to use. And because there's photographs from the show and the actors and it uses the logo, like the cover of the box is the splash screen from the TV show. It makes sense that it would be a little pared back, and those like Protogen's not really a thematic part of the game, whereas the other 3 are a lot more thematic in how they act. So yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to see this maybe in a couple seasons down the road, as the show opened up a little bit and got into the later books. And maybe expansions can do that. I don't know. Like, I like what it has, but now that I've gotten further along in the series, I wish I had more. Yeah.
But, I mean, I think, as far as the show and the books go, I think we give those a whole-hearted recommendations, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah. I'm tearing through, like, book, I think 5 I'm up to right now. Or maybe even, I think I finished 5 and I'm on to 6. I'm reading them so fast I can't even tell.
Yeah.
And I don't even like sci-fi. And the show has just gripped me. Like I just binged through the first couple seasons and I just finished the 3rd one like you. We could totally recommend that. And I think part of the reason why we love doing episodes like this is like, even like, and we're going to get into this with the next game as well. Like, this is not my type of game at all. Anthony's a little bit more, he likes Twilight Struggle and everything. So this is not my type of game, but like, give me an IP that can really sink my teeth into, and I will make it work.
Yeah. I think you would like this game because it is, it's area control and everything. And it's, it's all that, but it's card based. It's heavily card based. It's less than an hour and it's a theme you like. Like I didn't think I would like it either.
3 things I love. There you go. It's like,
exactly,
you know me.
Like I was all into it, and it's a game that I will bring periodically to game night, and if the right people are there who like the Expanse, we'll play it, even a year later. And it's at first it felt like one of those games that was going to drop off because it was hotness, and it's sticking around, which is impressive for an IP game.
All right, so that was The Expanse from WizKids, designer Jeff Engelstein. So the second game that we're going to talk about, we're going to approach this game, or the review of this game, really differently than we usually do. So Anthony hasn't played the game. I have. But working together with the publisher, I wanted to do something a little bit different. So what he did was he was able to put me in touch with a couple of backers of the game. And I had a chance, they were local in Connecticut, and I was able to go out and play the game with some backers. So, and, respond to, talk about it and see how they experience the game. And I'll get into the description of the game in a second. So I just wanted to kind of set the scene for what we're going to do. So we're going to do it in a couple of clips. So I'm going to play a clip of you guys with the backers of the game who love the books, who love everything about it, what they thought of the game after a play. I'm going to do the same thing with a group that did not know the books at all. We're also going to have a brief interview with the publisher to kind of fill in some gaps. But here, anyway, what I wanted to talk about with Anthony was just the Mistborn universe itself. So like with the Expanse, it's kind of on that second level. It's not Harry Potter. It's not Lord of the Rings. Maybe some people have heard of that, but not this kind of next level of stuff. Mistborn is definitely, I think Anthony would agree, that a good next step beyond those obvious candidates for fantasy adventure. So just talk about the Mistborn world a little bit. So Mistborn it takes place in a medieval fantasy setting, but as opposed to kind of it being this starting at least in this idyllic type thing, it's a straight up dystopia. So the world is scarred. There's volcanoes all over the place, and they're spitting out ash. Like the world is full of like ash, and it's just not a pleasant place to be. It's being ruled by a Lord Ruler who rules everything with an iron fist. He's able to maintain control because he's basically like the archmage, I suppose, and he controls all of the magic in the world, including all the magicians. The Mistborn, so there's a whole story about it. I won't get into a whole thing about it, but that, like, the Mistborn is basically the most powerful version of the magician, and then there's you could tell Brandon Sanderson was a total D&D goer. the magic is in the world is very, very kind of laid out and regimented. And then there's like magicians that are under there. So like you have this thing that is totally oppressing the population. So what do you get when you get that kind of world? You get, rebels who are rising up, and the Mistborn trilogy kind of follows the story of the rebels that are rising up. So Anthony, this is not a new series. I mean, it's been around for a while. How long ago did you read him?
10 years, I think. I specifically remember reading one of the books on my drive from Seattle to New York, which was 9 years ago.
There you go.
When my wife and I got married. So that's how I benchmark things. So yeah, it's been around for a long time. Brandon Sanderson, the author of these books, has been active for a good amount of time. I've read most of his books, I think, at this point, and these were among the first ones. So
yeah, this is the second series that he did.
Yeah, and so it was it struck me right away. Like, I've been reading fantasy books since I was 8, but these ones struck me immediately, and all of his books kind of do the same thing, where he has a very unique and interesting take on magic systems and how people interact with the world and utilize these powers, and they're always very well defined and strict in how they work and how they don't work, which is one of the things I really liked about this series. But of course, the characters are interesting too. Like, you have your typical nobody's become powerful people, but not in the same way you're used to. It's not like, the village idiot becomes the grand master mage of the world that we're used to. It's a little bit different. It's a much more urban series, which I liked.
All right, enough about the world setting. I can hear you guys through the podcast interface. Tell us about the game. Okay, so let's hear about Mistborn House War. So the other reason why I wanted to pair these two particular games is because in both of these cases, they confound our expectations of what we could expect in an IP game. The Expanse took what was in the background, this kind of push and pull political stuff, and made it foreground. Well, this is exactly what this game is doing too. You want to play the heroes, you want to play Vin and Kelsier and all of those heroes that are kind of rising up, but no, you are playing the nobles. You are playing the noble houses that are competing for favor with the Lord Ruler. So like I said before, the Lord Ruler is this kind of archmagician that's controlling this blasted land, and the way that the world works, society is kind of held together by these noble houses that control all the means of production, all the money, all the slave workers, all the precious metals and all that kind of stuff. So they're all vying for influence, and that's what this game is. This game is a highly competitive, backstabby negotiation game. So I'll tell you how it works. So each player is going to play a noble house that generates basic resources. So the resources are food, money, soldiers, slave workers, all that kind of thing. So every round you're going to get a certain stock of those resources. You're also going to draw cards to do various things, and I'll get to the cards in a second. So for your turn, what you're going to do is you're going to draw from a deck of problems. And the problems are going to represent bad things that happen in the world. Slave revolts, uprisings, challenges to the authority, etc. And what you're going to do is you have this little pawn, and you are going to choose from among the problems that are available problems on the board. You're going to say, I'm going to solve one of these problems. So let's say you try to solve slave revolt and slave revolt. has a couple of, that card will have a couple symbols on it that match what you got. So in order to fix it, you need 2 food, 2 warriors, or whatever it is. So then you could just do it, and that's fine. Or likely you don't have the precise mix of symbols in order to solve the problem, so you have to negotiate. So once you hand down that pawn, boom, negotiation begins. And you're trading all sorts of stuff. You're trading your different resources. You're trading favor, which is the victory points in the game. You're trading your card. Basically, anything and everything is on the table. Like, you can even trade future resources. Maybe you can even trade, dinner. Who pays for the pizza, all that kind of stuff after the game. Really, is a really open-ended negotiation game like that. So once people solve it, you divvy up the favor, and then you kind of move on with the game. So that would be cool enough, but I think where the game really, really shines is those cards. They're personality cards. They match up with the different soldiers and workers and all that kind of stuff in the world. And you could do all sorts of stuff with those cards. You can make problems easier or harder to solve. You can steal resources from people. You can steal their favor. You can kill their helpers. You can do all sorts of nasty stuff. You can offer favor and then play a card that says, nope, you cannot get favor for that. I'm going to get all the favor. It is really, really mean and really flexible. So you can get really inventive with the kind of cards that you can play in a particular turn. Players will draw constantly, so you are always going to have some resources available to you. So there's a lot of room to be very creative. Victory happens when the main character, Vin, comes out of the deck. Vin is a problem. If you can deal with her, fine. Whoever, just solve the problem, and whoever has the most favor is the winner. However, and this is another interesting wrinkle of the game, if you allow too many problems to happen and you reach a high on the quote-unquote unrest track, then the Lord Ruler dies, and the person with the lowest favor will win. So if you are falling behind, that is your quote-unquote catch-up mechanism. You can pretty much tank the game and try to be the lowest person. So I thought that was an interesting push-pull as well. One last thing about the game, as you will hear on the clips, there is a short, medium, and long version. The short is less than an hour. The medium's about 1.5 to 2 hours, and the long game can go even longer than that. Basically, it just depends on where you put the Vin card, how early it comes out in the deck. So that's the basic description of the game. I'm going to let the groups speak for themselves, and then I'm going to come back with some final thoughts. Hey everybody, Jason here. We just finished a game of Mistborn House War, 4 players, 2 of whom have not read the books, and 1 of whom have read the books so long ago, it may as well have been another lifetime ago. So we have some players who are not coming at the game knowing the books. Let's introduce them one at a time. Here's Cortland.
Hola.
Gary Poe from Late to the Table.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
And Mike.
Hi, how's it going?
Okay, so Mike was the winner, thanks to me completely screwing Gary at the end. Long story, I won't go into it. How did you guys enjoy the game generally?
It's pretty fun, almost nerve-wracking a little, but when you get to the end of it, it was exciting. Not gonna lie, but maybe I'm biased because I won.
No, it was a fun game. It was good that it was very simple and very I guess you could say streamlined for what you get out of it. And I probably wouldn't play the long version, but I wouldn't mind continue playing the short version, which is what we did, or the medium length version.
Why wouldn't you play the long version?
Because of the simplicity, there's also not a lot there at the end of the day. So it's mostly just negotiation. I can see it just getting repetitive after a long time. Okay. I mean, the box did say up to 2 hours, or past it.
What'd you think, Cortland?
I enjoyed it. I wouldn't want to play a 2-hour game of this, but I wouldn't mind playing a little bit longer than what we did. Yeah, this was a little fast.
Yeah, so the medium game is probably the sweet spot for the game, right? Okay. Do you think you needed to know the IP in order to enjoy it, or was it enjoyable just on its own?
I think it was enjoyable on its own. I mean, I'm going in this cold turkey, and game has a pretty straightforward mechanic to it. it's not like, I don't want to use the term simple because there is a little bit of complexity to it with the personality cards and the tokens for resources. So I do think there's enough to enjoy for what we played, or even longer. I mean, if the game leaves you wanting to play more, then that's good.
Yeah, we played the short game, and I think all of us agreed that was a little fast. So that's cool.
Speaking as the person who had read the book, I think it would be more enjoyable not having read the book, since the game favors you playing the bad guys. Although there is a good guy element way to win, it's very challenging.
Right. The good guy win is very, very hard to achieve, definitely, unless you kind of work it and everything. I'll go over that in the description. So that's an interesting point. It almost like hurts the enjoyment of the game to know the IP. Like if you're invested in Vin and Kelsier and stuff like that, you don't want to play the houses.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay. All right. So, any final thoughts about your experience with Mistborn?
No, solid game. It's I would just say that it's solid. I wouldn't be I wouldn't be running to the store purchasing it or anything like that. But it's a game that I wouldn't turn down to play if people want to play it, since it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty straight to the point, and I mean it's pretty solid with the game length. So solid game.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Hey, no problem. Thank you.
All right, so my man Cortland brought up a very interesting point there, that knowing the books might actually get in the way of you enjoying the game because you want to play the heroes, but you're stuck playing the bad guys. Womp, womp, womp. And unlike the Expanse, these are the bad guys. You don't want to do the noble houses. So I thought it would be interesting to reach out to the publisher, Crafty Games, and Alex Flagg from Crafty was good enough to come on and answer some of those questions, including Cortland's. All right, guys, I am here with Alex Flagg. He is a partner at Crafty Games, and he is also the brand manager of their Mistborn line. So our friend Cortland, as you heard in the last clip, had a question, and I figured that it would be great to reach out to this gentleman to see if we can get the answer. So welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so we are going to get a couple of critical questions asked, but first, let us know a little bit about you and about Crafty Games and the relationship with the Mistborn license.
I've been working on Crafty for 13 years now, and in 2007, I had a friend who convinced me that I needed to he'd been reading this great novel, and I really need to do something. I really needed to do something with this novel. It's so great. I had a lot of friends doing that. And so I was like, yeah, okay, fine. And I'll take a look at it, because I've heard this over and over again. So I started reading this novel he gave me called Mistborn, and I read about 20 pages into it. I was like, oh yeah, this guy's a gamer. I could see just the way he thought about things. He is focused on magic. Is sort of like, it clearly thought about like balance. Like balance right. was within this in the magic system. The way he told stories. There were a lot of things that just kind of gave me this idea he was a gamer. So I just wrote him an email, and at the time, Brandon, the author, he was brand new. Like I think he had 2 novels out. Mistborn was his second novel. And so I wrote him, said, hey, I design role-playing games, and I think your game has a lot of potential as a role-playing game. Would you be interested in anything like that at all? Expecting I have to explain it to somebody, like, okay, this is a weird game. You play with dice and stuff. And he was like, oh, yes, let's talk. And so he was going to be in Portland like 3 days later, as it turned out, just Providence. He was going to be on the book tour for the second Mistborn novel, Well of Ascension. And so I went out and met him at his reading. We sat down, had a hamburger afterwards, and hit it off right then and there. And, just like basically had the framework of what I wanted to do. And like I wanted to kind of be like the Star Wars role-playing game was for the Star Wars universe. The idea that we could develop some game material that would flesh out his world, right. Let people play in the box, and then add a lot of background texture to it, that would be kind of building on the canon and adding some stuff to the milieu. And he was, enthused. He liked the idea a lot. So that was the beginning of our relationship. And, I've been doing that, since then, about 10 years on, here we are with a big old board game and, a role-playing game line that's six books now, and, dice and a bunch of other things in the pipe that we like. So, and of course, here he is, blown out all over the place, got the wheel of time right before we announced it, and then it, like literally we announced the partnership, and then like a month later it's like announced, oh yeah, by the way, he's going to be doing the wheel of time. It's like, holy crap, and so
there's no just emailing him now.
yeah, exactly. No. Now he's got people. He's got lots of people. Yeah. And so like, everything is snowballed, and then of course he's got just beyond, the circumstances. I mean, the guy works his butt off. So, he churns out novels like nobody's business. So, I mean, he was the perfect guy to I mean, I got very lucky, but, the nice thing about Brendan is he's so accessible and easy to talk to, and like down to earth. And so, that's what's really made the relationship really fruitful over the long term. Everybody with him and his team has been great the whole time.
So, all right, thank you very much for giving us some knowledge about how that all started, and congratulations to you for getting on the train just before it really rocketed out of the station. So you guys so basically the core stuff that you've been doing so far is the RPG. What was the driver to make an actual board game?
Well, role-playing games are really good for telling, a certain format and style of story. But, they're also, they've got an accessibility challenge, that not everybody who likes novels is interested in a role-playing game. But beyond that, not everybody can commit to campaigns. We've heard this forever, I really like your role-playing games if it was Spycraft or if it was Fantasycraft or if it was, whatever. But even Mistborn adventure game. But people had a hard time getting their groups to go in on them, to commit to the campaign. And so we knew we wanted to, the Mistborn was, beloved enough that we didn't have to stick only to one format. So we really started to look at the, around, 2012, 2013, really started considering what else could we do with the license in the kind of broader range of game formats. Mm-hmm. And noodled on that for a while, and decided, maybe a board game would be a good addition. But we didn't want to just rehash what had already been done with the role playing game. We didn't want to make it a game, directly like repeating the RPG experience. We had the RPG. The RPG is really good because in there you're playing Kelsier's crew, or not Kelsier's crew. You're playing a crew similar to Kelsier's crew. You're causing all sorts of criminal mayhem. You're creating your own stories. You're doing the stuff like the novel heroes do. But we wanted to have something that gave people a new spin on the world, and that's where Mistborn House War really started as the idea.
Mm-hmm. So it's a highly competitive game, highly negotiation game focused on the houses, as we've covered in the description. So I just wanted to very quickly ask you a question that came up with one of our gamers, Cortland, who looked at the game, was familiar with the novels, and just was shocked. Because he expected to sit down at a game. He wasn't familiar with the RPGs. Maybe that's where the disconnect was. He wasn't expecting to play the houses against Vin and Kelsier and all those players. A strange thing happened to where, like, I explained the win condition and the lose condition, the different win conditions actually. And I told him about, like, okay, you can actually move up a track and let the rebels win. He's like, I want to do that.
Right. Yeah, that is not unusual, especially for first-time players. Uh-huh. A lot of people love, trying to burn the whole thing down from the inside. So that's cool. I'm glad that's that people really grab onto that idea. But yeah, he's not the first person that is surprised by what the game is. I mean, and I think one thing that we like to do at Crafty is try to defy expectations a little bit. We wanted to have something that gave people a different experience from the RPG. We had that sort of group of customers that we have been building for a long time, courting with all this material, but, they have that material, and so we want to give people a different experience and one that was actually even a little bit closer to the experience of the novels. And so that's where this idea, when I was talking with Kevin Wilson in the initial concept, I've been noodling something about playing the nobles for a long time, how to pull it off in tabletop setting and stuff like that. But, I thought this is a great opportunity to do a game about basically like a side quill to the first novel. Mm-hmm. And so instead of having people just replicating the first novel, which is the bone I always have to pick with most licensed properties, which is like, let's recreate this piece of entertainment you have. People already have the novel, right? So the reason they love Mistborn, generally speaking, is because they've got the novels and they love the novels and the characters. But why not give them some sort of new experience, but that's also familiar and a little more accessible to folks that may not be like hardcore gamers. And so that's where this idea of doing the story of the nobles during the events of the first novel really started to gel.
Would you consider doing a more traditional kind of heroes versus enemies board game in the future?
Yeah, no, we have some plans on that. Again, kind of defying expectations a little bit here, but yeah, we have something else that we're tinkering with now that is along those lines.
All right, we are about to share the last clip, which is the clip we did with the players of the game. So, guys, look forward to that. And Alex, thank you so much for helping us understand how you guys approach this project.
Sure thing, anytime.
Hey everybody, Jason here. I'm at the Newington Tabletop Shop where I've just completed a rousing game of Mistborn. So this group is players that are familiar with the Mistborn trilogy. A couple of players definitely love it. So we want to talk about their impressions of the game in the context of them loving the game so much. But let's get some introductions first. So first to my left we have...
Rob.
Lucas.
John?
All right, so these were backers of the game, so they are definitely kind of, I guess, predisposed to liking it a little bit. But we just finished the game. Like I said, 2 hours, a medium-length game. What did you guys think?
Fun. It was a good deal of interaction and kind of exciting at the end, I think, where it needed to be.
Yeah, a lot of what he said... last week I played a short game, and I liked this a lot more. It was longer and had more opportunity to do stuff.
You guys are burying the lead, man. That was one of the most exciting innings I've had in a game all year. Come on now, what happened?
I mean, well, it started out where we all got really worried because one of the mechanics is if this token gets all the way to the end, game over, ha ha ha. So we kind of panicked then, and then as the game got longer, we took out most of the problems, and it seemed a little slow in the middle, but as we got towards the end, we realized we were a little short on resources, and it started getting more exciting towards the end because we weren't sure if we were going to be able to solve things in time, and this was the best iteration of the game I've played. I'd only played with 3 players before. I think 4 or 5 is where it's at.
So what happened at the end of the game was, I revealed myself as the quote-unquote traitor pretty early, to my detriment. I think I ended up kind of screwed a little bit, but towards the end I was really screwing with people and preventing them from solving cases and really trying to get that alternate and victory condition, but these guys kind of pulled it out at the last second, so that was really, really cool. So yeah, I think we all had a pretty positive experience of the game. Talk about the game in the context of how much you like the books. Do you feel like this game... is this game better for you guys as an experience because you're so familiar with the world?
Yeah, I think for me it is. I don't play a lot of games with the main mechanic of the game is basically negotiations and making deals with people. I've played a couple games, but this one is very... I think if you're not doing that, you're not getting the most of the game. I like the Mistborn world a lot. And while you're playing as the noble houses in the game, which are really kind of just not the main focus of the book. I think they're kind of like the I guess the problem or
right. They're in the background, like they had color.
Yeah, exactly. But like it's the flavor. You see the familiar cards of the different powers and characters in the game, and so it does enhance the gameplay for me.
What do you think?
All right, well, I think this game nailed the flavor of the books, and that helps a lot. I've played the game with people who have read the books and people who haven't, and everyone liked the game. Personally, I think the flavor, for example, there's riders and soothers who are two opposing. They do the same thing, just kind of backwards in the books, and the way the cards play out is one can bump something forward, one can bump something backward, and it's little things like that that make it really perfect. I think that if you've read the books, it makes the game a lot better, but if you haven't read the books, it's still a lot of fun, as long as you've got cool people to negotiate with.
Right, because you're doing things in those different. It reminds you of the books that you like and why you like them while you're playing a game. So that's good.
Yeah, the theme doesn't disappear like a lot of games would. We reviewed a game called The Expanse. Before this, we're going to do that in the same episode. I think the theme, you forget it while you're playing it. This game, you're reminded of the soothers and the coin shots and everything. It does a really good job with that.
I was just going to say that it is definitely like a different play experience when you're playing with someone or people who have read the books as opposed to people who have not. Like, it just noticing things, little details, being like, "What's this? What does it do?" Stuff like that.
Yeah. I think maybe it makes sense, or you have like almost an understanding before you even play the stuff.
Read the card.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're like a coin shot. That's gonna kill something.
Right.
Or like he said, riders and soothers will just you do the opposite things in the card game and the book.
Did you guys, or were you guys bothered by the fact that you were playing the quote-unquote bad guys? Did you have an instinct to want to play Vin and Kelsier, or were you just happy to be playing in this world?
I didn't think about that one for a second.
I'll go. I'll never shut up. I mean, I wanted to play the good guys, but it was fun to be a bunch of ornery, annoying, kind of grumpy nobles fighting with each other, because the whole world is almost literally burning or going to burn, and we're here fighting with each other instead of facing the real threat.
Cool.
I didn't have much of a feeling or a want to play Kelsey and Vin. Like I enjoy playing the villains and a lot of stuff. And
you're a teenager. Teenagers just like playing bad guys.
I have no response.
Last question, just in terms. So I think we all agree the game was very cool, thematic, evocative. We had a really good time with it. I mean, we literally yelled out loud at the end of that. People like on the other tables playing Netrunner or whatever, looking at us and stuff. But what do you guys like about the Mistborn world? What do you think separates it as a fantasy world from other worlds?
I mean, I like the magic. I like the magic, which is something that Brandon Sanderson does, I think, pretty well. Is he develops a magic system and kind of explains almost too much, like every little aspect and facet of the way it works. He explains by the time you're done with the story. So I like that. In the fact that there's different types. It manifests in all these different abilities, and those are all built into the game too, so I like that.
It's not one of those series where magicians do stuff and it's like, ooh, like Gandalf. Right, he can just basically do anything that you need him to. Like, oh, you want to resurrect now? Sure. There's hard and fast rules of the magic here, and I think that is to the series' benefit.
Yeah, the way it's thought out and explained is very well, all the different kinds of magic, and the world itself is really unique, I think, in just there's ash raining from the sky.
Yep. Yeah, it's the urgency, the dire, everything is just going to hell, and it just ramps up throughout the series.
And there are some really cool creatures in this world.
Yeah, they show up a little bit in the game, not a lot. You see the big brutish Koloths a couple times, and you see what happens to people when you jam spikes in their eyes and give them authority. So that's fun. But I mean, the world, like y'all said before, the rules are really what makes Brandon Sanderson's worlds great. But what was really nice about this, the world in general, is the good guys kind of have it's like a heist movie as a fantasy series, because the main guys are a bunch of thieves and crooks who are scheming against the government, who ostensibly is the legal people in charge of all these things. But it makes it really interesting. And then when you play the other side in this, it's funny, like, in the books, you're like, oh man, Doxson, he's so cool. And then here you're like, oh great, here comes Doxson, he's going to cause some problems. I'm not going to get my bread this turn, man.
And that doesn't even get into the whole,
Philosophy.
God thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Lord Ruler, and then the actual kind of bigger gods, or where the magic comes from, and or the even greater universe that the Mistborn is a part of.
Yeah. Cosmere. Cosmere. Yes. Yeah.
Right. So no spoilers. We're not going to get into that. We're just kind of talking in general about why we love the books. Definitely. Thank you guys very much. I do have something to share. This is the first time that it's being announced. There is an expansion that is being developed for the game, The Siege of Luthadel. They are going to incorporate more mechanics based on what happened in, spoiler, some very specific things happen in the book that are being integrated in the next wave of it. So we are definitely going to get more content for it.
Awesome.
Huzzah!
All right, so this was, reintroduce yourself again, guys.
Rob.
Lucas.
John.
Thank you guys so much. This was super fun.
All right,
Thanks. It was a lot of fun, too.
Yep.
All right, so in terms of my final thoughts on Mistborn House War, I agree with everybody. In the sense that if you're not familiar with the Mistborn novels, there's some stuff here. It's definitely worth engaging. Buyer beware in a sense, because it does give that sense of repetitiveness. Every turn is the same. You're putting down that little negotiation pawn, and you're initiating negotiation, and there's not a lot that's going to change up as the game moves on, especially as it hits the 90, 120 minute mark. Just kind of take a look out for that. For me, the draw was the card play. The card play just mixed everything up. You could do so many different things, had so many chances to be clever, which is one of the things that a good game delivers. You can, set up negotiations and get everybody to agree on the table, then go boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden, the rules of the negotiation have changed. And then another player could come in and say, no, you must adhere to the terms of the rule, and they play that specific card. There's so much there in terms of the card play. I really, really enjoyed it. So that's if you don't know the series. If you do know the series, then this game just opens up and has a ton for you. It's definitely one of those games, even though you're not playing the heroes, which that's what the novels are all about, you're still playing in that world. So I'm that geek that did read the source materials for every other RPG that I've ever played. The Mistborn adventure game, as you heard with the interview with Alex Flagg, has a lot of extra canonical stuff to just soak yourself in there. The Mistborn world takes you into that next level of it, lets you play in it in a very effective way. I mean, it was really, really fun to be able to see the cards, recognize what's going on, and really wrap myself up in the universe, even if I wasn't playing the good guys. So a lot there, a lot of fun, a lot for those people who know the books. So that's going to do it for our coverage of The Expanse and Mistborn House War. Two very good games for two excellent, excellent IPs. I think Anthony and I are both on the same page.
All right, so there you go, guys. We have a couple of big, expansive novel-based board games.
You did not do that on accident.
I did, but I'm going to take credit for it. And if those sound interesting to you, whether it's something a little more on the negotiation end or something a little more on the area control Euro end, either way, if you like the book series or if you like those mechanics, check these games out. But that's going to be everything for this week of Every Night is Game Night. Until next time, go ahead and grab a solo game off the shelf and let's make every night game night.
Later, everybody.